to start.
Okay. Good morning. It is 11:30 a.m. on Thursday, February 13th, 2025, and this is a regular meeting of the Sandpoint Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee. It's now called to order in council chambers at City Hall, 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. For the record, I am Committee Chair Kate Huseman presiding. Also present are Vice Chair Molly O'Reilly and committee members Aaron Billings, Julie Perchinsky, Radley Peterson, and Reed Weber. In addition to the committee, we also have our staff liaison, city engineer Brandon Steglin in attendance. Committee member Jennifer Heller and council liaison Deb Rule will join us remotely if they are able to. Committee member Evan Lewis is absent. And as of January 31st, 2025, Taylor Prather has stepped down from her participation as a committee member. Mayor Grimm plans to appoint a new member. So we all here, looks like. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our January 9th, 2025 meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Molly. Do we have a second? Thank you, Reed. All in favor? Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes and the minutes are approved as presented. So we will go on to old/unfinished business. We will continue discussion on public lake access at Ella, Euclid, and Division Streets. Did you want to say anything further about that, or are you just leaving it to my request to revisit it?
I was just leaving it to your request, so not really an update right now.
Okay.
But, other than plan is we're early in the process, but the plan so far is to try to find money to build a sidewalk down to the lake access at the south end of Euclid. Possibly find money for some signage and benches and maybe some landscaping. Could be done in one phase or multiple phases. We're still kind of planning it out.
What would the timeline for that be?
It could be sometime this summer during the construction season.
Okay, that's cool.
Depending on when we look into it, it could be delayed till next year.
Okay. The reason I wanted to revisit it, it was in the minutes from the last meeting, which I missed. And I noticed that they said that if any of us were aware of lake accesses, we would want to bring them to this committee's attention. So I just wanted to remind you all that if you are aware, please let us know. And Canixie Land Trust is putting together a map of the whole lake with all the public accesses around, including those in the city. So I don't know if those will reveal anymore within the city limits. But I just want to stay on top of it because we've lost some access recently.
Could I, so that strip that goes down below the sewer, is that in the sewer work plan to access that, to use that strip as well? The one behind the sewer that goes along front of those houses, and
It
it doesn't have
any,
waterfront, it's just access.
doesn't have anything to do with the sewer plant.
You wouldn't do it as it's being worked on or anything like that, or
No.
add to that?
It wouldn't have anything to do with the wastewater treatment plant. It is public right of way, which means that the city controls it and it's owned by the Independent Highway District. The city has the authority to build new roads, build other things there. By right, the public does have the right to walk down there at a minimum right now. It's just grass right now.
Okay. Just keep that in our minds too.
However,
Yeah.
just to be aware, since we're, on the record, that right of way does not actually get all the way to the lake level, which is where state rules say that the public has access to travel within the high water mark, the lake level. That it dead ends at a community owned lot by the Moran Park Association, I believe. So you really only can get down on that right of way, and then you're just kind of lake if you walk onto that private property on somebody else's property. So just be aware.
Thank you. Anything else? about lake access. Styling. All right, we'll now move on to new business, and I want to open the floor to brief reports from our subcommittees. And I reviewed the committee members in the minutes last meeting, and they seemed correct to me, but if any of you notice any irregularities there, if you would. So maybe Aaron, could you kick off with the events committee and just give a 30-second to 1 minute summary of what we've been working on?
Well, we considered bike to work in May, but that may be too labor intensive for just this committee if we can't get some more partners on that. So we're looking into other ways to partner with somebody on maybe a possible.
Okay, at some point, we might want to ask the full committee to be involved. I believe that's in the definition of what this committee is supposed to do. Full committee, not just our subcommittee.
Once we get an event,
Yeah.
we want to, right?
So before you all, anything else we want to bring up? All right. Molly, can you say something brief about what the intersection committee's been up to?
Yeah, we scheduled our first meeting for next month since we met towards the end of January. And are divided up tasks, looking at recommendations to the committee, which would then recommend to the city for the structure of intersections, curbs, curb ramps, et cetera, and then others are looking into potential changes to recommend short term for the Boyer Highway 2 intersection, which is clearly a terrible problem for people trying to walk or bike across or through that one.
I don't have anything to add to that, and our other member is not here, so I think that covers it. Thank you, Molly. Who here is would like to speak for the MTMP subcommittee?
Do that. We had our first meeting last week. Reed, Molly, Deb, and I were present. We basically just talked about how we were going to operate as a subcommittee. Our first plan of attack is to look at the first Sandpoint Street project that's coming up, just because it's going quickly. Then once we've discussed that, Brandon's gonna be at our next meeting. Let's back up to your 10,000-foot level and actually start reviewing the master plan. We want to get our hands on this first stab project before it's.
Smart. Do you anticipate needing any input from the whole committee anytime soon?
I don't know.
Yeah.
We're not there yet.
Okay,
It's decent
fair
chance.
enough, fair enough. Okay.
Our next meeting is 2 weeks before the meeting, so.
You. And then who am I missing? Development review. You can speak for development review.
We haven't got to meet yet because we had a meeting that had to get canceled and then Jen been out of town and.
Okay. Yeah, one thing I've noticed for myself is that between this monthly meeting and then the subcommittee meetings and then doing some of the homework for the subcommittees, I'm starting to verge on overwhelm. Thought this would be easier than planning and zoning, but it's not. So if we find that this is more than we can handle, maybe we need to cut down our number of subcommittees, redefine what we want to achieve. So I just want everyone to be on top of that and be aware of that as they're setting up meetings. Cool. Thank you very much. Any other comments about subcommittees? Okay. There are no members of the public in attendance, so I don't think we need to speak. That's convenient. So our next item of business is a presentation from Brandon Stegman on the downtown parking lot reconstruction concept. It's yours.
I think, we're on number 4, right? I think I was gonna let, Jason go first.
Oh, you're right,
I
sorry.
know they're very similar items.
Okay.
Worded exactly the same. Go ahead, Jason.
Almost worded exactly. There's obviously some overlap. Okay, you ready for,
Power 10, go for it, Jason, thank
Okay.
you.
thanks to the park, or sorry, to the Ped Bike Committee for letting me join you today. I'm really hoping to get kind of 2 perspectives from you. First of all, as a citizen advisory board, your group represents a sampling of the Sandpoint community, just as general citizens. As the Pedestrian Bicycle Committee yourselves, you have a very specific, mission that you're advancing out of our comprehensive plan. So as you give me feedback over the next half hour, 45 minutes, please have like kind of both those lenses on. As a citizen of Sandpoint, what are your thoughts on this plan? And then as an advocate for pedestrian and bicycle connectivity, what are your thoughts on this plan? Because those can kind of be 2 different hats. You might see what I mean when we get into a little bit more. A little background, the parking management plan that you're going to hear about today, I'm sure you've already heard about in the community. It's been discussed and bantered about in the papers and on the social media. Reed is a member of our Planning and Zoning Commission. He's seen this presentation that I'm going to share with you today because this has been presented now twice to the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's been presented to the Parks Commission twice. They were introduced to it a month ago, and then yesterday we spent the full 90-minute meeting going to giving feedback on this. It has not been presented to City Council because it's not ready for that yet. There have been countless changes to this since the first draft came out about a month ago, and there are going to be many more before it's ready to bring to City Council. So somebody in the Parks Commission yesterday wrote on the they did a little poster activity. Their posters around the room. One of the suggestions was fast. What was it? Fast is slow and slow is good, or something like. Don't rush it. Take your time. That's what we're trying to do here is get a lot of community feedback on this before we bring something to City Council. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the actual presentation. Sorry. Soon. There it is. Because I'd rather spend the time getting input and feedback. Okay. Assuming all can see this as well. Go back. Okay. Why are we talking about bringing paid parking back to Sandpoint? This proposal that we're talking about today came out of 2 planning efforts over the last 3 years. The comprehensive plan, you've all read it. Goal 1A of the multimodal chapter relates to parking management downtown to better serve local businesses. And then in 2022, our parking study, we did a downtown parking study over several months that looked at the demand for parking downtown and the usage of our city's 1,500 plus street and off-street parking spaces. And there were some very clear problems identified in that study. And one of the actions that study recommended was implementing paid parking, specifically at our off-street parking facilities downtown. So the background is that we have identified a problem through our master planning processes, and the mayor asked me to develop a solution for that problem. This happens to be something that I'm passionate about because I was an economist before I was in planning, and there's simple economic solutions to problems like this, and that's what the parking management plan is all about. So the real issue here is that the status quo is not serving city taxpayers. We know from the parking study that our city-owned lots are nearly 100% occupied during the peak season in the summer. There's some data you'll see in a minute on that. We don't have time limits in our off-street parking facilities. We do downtown. We've heard about the 2-hour shuffle where downtown business employees will leave their work every few hours to move their car to try to avoid parking tickets. I have a solution for that I think is going to benefit downtown business employees. And we have a failing infrastructure that Brandon's going to be presenting on the proposal to resurface one of our city parking lots shortly. There's not a funding mechanism for that, so we're using property tax money to do that work. It's in other words, free parking is not free. We're using taxpayer dollars to maintain and improve parking facilities downtown. This is an amenity that's largely used by non-residents of Sandpoint, and it provides great value to non-residents of Sandpoint. And historically, they had to pay for it. Just in the last 10 years, we've not had paid parking in Sandpoint. So some background here. We don't want to spend too much time in the hotel. This has been talked about plenty in the community. The hotel is being required to provide the number of parking spaces required by code. That's 145. They commissioned a study that revealed that the demand for parking at the hotel would be 141 spaces. They're being required to provide 145. There's been in the community some connection between the proposal for paid parking and the hotel. These are unrelated. We've known since 2022 parking study and the comp plan before that we have a parking issue downtown. There's no privatization of city parking through the hotel project. There's been no commitment of public parking spaces to the hotel. The city retains full control over public parking downtown. And it would be up to city council to establish policies, for example, no hotel use of the city beach parking lot. That's a very simple and enforceable policy that we could implement if the council decided to do that. So just to separate those two issues, this is not hotel related. And quite honestly, we've not seen any action on the hotel since last year. No building permit's been applied for, so we don't even know the status of that hotel project right now, whether it's going forward or not. I mentioned the fact that our parking's not currently free. We know that there are real costs associated with off-street parking downtown. We've estimated with some help from Brandon, our engineer, calculating the cost per parking space is around $575 to city taxpayers. That's $290,000 a year of maintenance and eventual replacement costs borne by taxpayers. But we don't pay that every year, right? But this year we're looking at a possibly $400,000 resurfacing of one of our city parking lots, and possibly a second one. We're looking to do a resurfacing project at City Beach as well. That's going to cost over $1 million. Okay, but there's really no revenue source for doing that sort of work at the city right now. Moving sort of quickly through this, just some numbers here. And pictures, you guys know, you live in Sandpoint, you walk, ride your bike, sometimes park downtown. You know, the state of our parking facilities there in very, very poor shape. There are 505 off-street parking spaces and 1,097 on-street stalls in the downtown commercial core. So around 1,600 parking spaces total that the city provides downtown. And these are the two key numbers that informed the parking management plan. Just look at these, read the captions. Think to yourself, what's the problem that these numbers identify? Anybody tell us what the problem is with these two numbers?
Like, it seems like people are parking in the lots instead of on the street. You want to get them on the street? I mean, that's what you want them to move to, parking on the street.
But what problem do these numbers create? Like if you're a user, if you're a beach goer, what's the problem that these numbers create?
I can't park next to the beach with my
Unlikely, right?
umbrella and my
Yeah.
toddlers and
Yeah.
my cooler and.
During peak hours in the summer, our parking lots are nearly 100% occupied, meaning they're not serving people well, right? The optimal occupancy rate on public parking facilities is 85%. Anything above that, if more than 85% of parking stalls are occupied at any given time, it's a failing system. If anything below that is occupied, it's a failing system. It means you have more parking than you need. The optimal level of occupancy of public parking stalls is 85%. We're at 97 for off-street and 51 for on-street. We want to bring those both towards 85%. And the way that we do that is create a system of incentives that gets people to go from the over-occupied parking lots to the under-occupied street parking stalls. So the goal is to increase the availability of parking in our city parking lots for those who need them and possibly deserve them. In this case, is city taxpayers, because city taxpayers are already paying a lot of taxes to help maintain them. So here's the problem revealed in our parking study in 2022. On the left, you see the occupancy rates during peak summer hour at our street parking stalls. All those blue areas have more than 50% of parking spaces unoccupied during peak summer hour. Okay. That's like half of the street parking in Sandpoint is not, well, it is. It's exactly half of the street parking in Sandpoint is empty during the peak summer hour. But our parking lots on the right, you can see the city lot here. This is the one Brandon's talking about later, 85 to 95% full. City beach lot, 95 to 100% full. The yellow area there is the boat trailer parking, that's 75 to 80% full. Dock Street, 100% occupied. And the, that's, I don't know why they included the, the rail station, the Amtrak station is on here. I don't know anybody who parks over there unless they're going train journey. But this other one, right before City Beach, 100% occupied. The Sand Creek lot behind Panhandle Kona Coffee, 100% occupied. And actually, I didn't include the Pondere Bay Trail lot, but that's also at 100% during peak summer hours. So how do we free up more of those spaces for the locals whose taxes are going to maintaining them and increase convenience and availability of parking for those who really need it? There's the bar charts behind those numbers. You can see the dark orange line across the top is the 85% target, and the bars beneath that or above that are where we actually are. So we're trying to get both of those closer to the 85% line. I mentioned these numbers earlier. $575 per stall is the real cost of maintaining off-street parking downtown. For 505 parking stalls, that's around $300,000 a year. Okay. And you've got a number here. City plans to resurface and restripe the city lot. That's Brandon's project. That's going to cost Sandpoint taxpayers around $400,000. It's not free. That's $85 per household is what we're going to be paying to resurface that parking lot this year. So I don't know about guys, but it's not heavily used by city of Sandpoint residents. Okay. Free parking is not free. It's subsidized. Who pays? Sandpoint taxpayers. Who benefits? Anybody who uses them who's not a Sandpoint taxpayer. Around $75 per household per year is what we're paying Sandpoint parking. But it's largely unavailable to those who are paying. So the proposed policy is to reallocate demand through a paid parking policy that only applies to the off-street parking, which is over capacity. There will be, these numbers have changed slightly in the draft that I updated yesterday for you, so ignore these numbers. The daily maximums are slightly higher at 2 of our parking facilities now. And to provide affordable parking passes that provide Sandpoint residents with almost all the free parking they would need if they have one of these cheap passes. The proposal is now for a $15 pass for Sandpoint residents and a $30 pass for non-residents. This program will generate hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that can be allocated towards maintaining our parking infrastructure and the amenities that they serve. I had the mayor and the city planner this morning pulled me in and want to talk. I actually want to talk to them. Like, what if we through an ordinance were to put some of the revenues from parking towards multimodal transportation infrastructure as well, pedestrian bicycle improvements, improvement bike connectivity to downtown. We know this is something we need a funding source for. So at the time of adoption of a parking management plan, we would likely also adopt a city ordinance that articulates how much of the money generated through parking revenues go towards different things. Some's going to go into the general fund. Some's going to go into the parking improvement fund. Maybe some goes into a pathways fund so we can improve bicycle connectivity and pedestrian connectivity down to City Beach so that locals don't have to depend on their cars to get down there. Okay, I think this is updated. And if you would look at the fee schedule in your packet, the gray boxes are for you guys to leave comments on. And if you want to give these to city staff at a later time, feel free to take this home and mark it up with your feedback. I welcome it all. I've got a running sheet I'll show you in a minute of dozens, if not hundreds of comments at this point that we've received. All the red ink is what has changed since the original proposal a month ago. So a lot has changed, as you can see, and this is all based on feedback. So just have a look at that fee schedule.
So this is just off-street parking.
This is only applies to off-street parking. We're not charging for parking on city streets, even though throughout this presentation, you'll see pictures of Sandpoint when we did charge for on-street parking. Until the 90s, there were meters on most downtown streets.
Yeah.
And the city lot was a pay lot until 2016.
Right.
So that's why I say bringing paid parking back to Sandpoint. There was paid parking downtown most of the 20th century and into into the 2010s at the city parking. So
And does that include behind Matchwood, that city?
that is a city
Or-
managed lot, but this
Yeah.
parking proposal does not
Does
call
not-
for paid parking there. We know those lots are mostly empty during the times in the summer, so we want to encourage people to park out at Sixth Avenue
Yeah.
and walk into town.
I also just want to be clear about those, you're talking about the ones behind Matchwood, right?
Yeah.
Between Army
Yes.
surplus. That's actually state right of way. There's kind of a maybe formal or informal agreement where they allow us to manage that as free public parking. But
Mhm.
theoretically, that could change in the future and all of those spaces could be wiped out,
Mhm.
which would add additional stress on them or other off-street parking facilities. So just be aware that it may not be like that forever. We may lose those at some point in the future if the state decides to do something.
Yeah. Actually, on your printout there, you can see a comment I added yesterday when I received in the mail a letter from this gentleman. He didn't provide an email address, so I just picked up the phone and called him. We had a great talk, and these were some of his comments that I added in the margin there. He's a downtown business owner, and he said that the draft that I think was in your packet for today had like $250 for a downtown pass. And Wayne here owns a realty office, that's 6 employees. He said, Jason, you gotta make sure the juice is worth the squeeze. $240, you are leaving way too much money on the table. I, as a downtown business owner, his employees are currently paying $60 a month for off-street parking on a private parking. He said, you can't charge $20 a month for off-street parking. That's not nearly high enough. You gotta make sure you're generating the revenue to maintain these lots. I would happily buy each of my employees a $500 annual parking pass for the city parking lot. So the proposal was to increase that from $20 a month to $40 a month. But there's another proposal that's coming out of that discussion as well that I'll share with you in a moment.
Molly, did you have a?
Yeah,
thought?
Molly, sorry.
Yeah, I have several, but let me ask one. Does anybody remember why we went to paid parking? Why we went to free parking in the city lots? There was one reason. Why, what was it?
I know
What is it?
downtown businesses were complaining about having to shuffle their cars every 2 or 3 hours from the free street parking. And their employees were having to leave to go move their car, drive around the block, find a new space because they didn't want to get tickets from Sandpoint Police. So the mayor at the time said, let's just make the city lot free for all downtown employees. And then we won't have employees having to constantly run out and shuffle their cars around.
Well, and there were other downtown businesses that said, my neighbor is parking in front of my place of business all day and just moving their car a little bit. So
That's
what
fine.
are you going to do to prevent that?
I have a very good proposal, I think, Molly. So
Good.
I've talked about this with the mayor, and I'm just gonna pull up a different slide here for you. I literally just was working on this morning.
Good.
So everything you see in green here, except for the 2 ITD lots, these are the lots over by Matchwood, are currently street parking stalls that have a 4-hour time limit. Okay, so orange is 2 hours, yellow is 3 hours, green is 4 hours. My proposal that I gotta talk to the police chief about this, I think he's gonna like it because it means less enforcement, is to make all the 4-hour parking spaces no time limit parking spaces. And these are not far from downtown. These are 4 or 5 blocks at the most, about 1,000 feet from those green parking spaces to where people currently parking at the city lot would have to get to work. So the proposal is to basically turn all of our 4-hour parking into no time limit parking. And then this becomes primarily where downtown business employees park. Or if they need the convenience of parking in the center of downtown, they buy an annual parking pass or a monthly parking pass for the city lot. But the problem is, if you're gonna move your car every 2 or 3 hours to avoid a parking ticket, parking 5 blocks away, and then still have to leave at lunch to go move your car, what's the point? What is the purpose of time limited street parking? It's to incentivize turnover to keep those spaces available for shoppers, for people coming downtown to shop. But we know from our parking study, which is right here, that those parking spaces are pretty much empty most days. They're 0 to 50% occupied. And I can find that table for you here. So we know
Yep.
that most of those currently 4-hour parking spaces are experiencing below 50% occupancy. So why
Okay.
should we burden police with enforcing 4-hour time limits there and prohibit downtown business workers from parking there all day?
I would just be sure you check with residents and businesses who now will have folks parked full-time in front of their places. But let me ask, what is the cost of on-street parking to us? It's
It's
not negligible.
It's $100 per second that you go over your 2 or 3 hour time limit
What does it cost the city to
to
provide
maintain.
on-street parking? We have officers, we have snow plowing, we have street cleaning. There are a bunch of expenses. What is the cost of on-street parking to the city?
Yeah, the cost to the city is maintenance, the right of way that we have to maintain, the striping of that on-street parking, the crack sealing, the plowing of it.
You have a
um,
dollar
And then the
figure that
eventual
varies?
Yeah.
repaving. So
And
somewhere,
I think that should be also contemplated. I think that should be part of this study. What is the cost of on-street parking? Because you are going to have on-street issues after you charge for off-street. So you're going to want to have all your data there as you figure out how to deal with it, I think. I'd be
So-
surprised.
so what we know is that 51% of our street stalls are occupied during peak times right now. Until we approach that 85% occupancy level, we're not in a constrained parking environment. We have no parking constraints on our streets downtown right now,
But you have
except
costs.
during.
Jason,
Yeah, I'm not, I
I
understand,
know.
yeah, I understand.
You
Yeah.
can push a lot of parking to on-street. I understand that because we have the capacity. But what is the cost? Free parking is costly, whether it's
Yep.
on or off-street. And I'm just suggesting that you figure the cost of on-street and include that. But I'd like to move on. What role is Spot playing in all this?
Donna has come to the last 2 presentations on this. She is very eager to support public transportation solutions that reduce the dependency on private vehicles. So we
Okay.
talked yesterday talked yesterday at the Parks Commission meeting about Spot's potential interest in extending a seasonal route down to City Beach. They're very interested in that, especially if
Right.
the city pays for it.
Molly, if I could interrupt for just a second, I was trying to hold off on questions until Jason finished his presentation, and now I'm gonna get confused. If we.
I'm sorry.
ask
I'll be
questions.
quiet.
So just jot down whatever you need to, and then let's make sure we have time for questions when Jason is finished, and Jason, yeah.
Thank you. Thank
come
you.
to a
I'm
logical
almost done,
conclusion.
and then I'd love to have discussion, open it up.
Okay,
So these are all the different passes that we're talking about. Basically $15 for a city resident pass, 3 hours of parking at the city lot and 4 hours at the city beach lot is the proposal. The number one feedback we got in round 1 of this, draft 1 of this, was more time for taxpayers at the city beach lot. Okay, and just to be clear, I think there was some misconception that 4 hours is like you only get 4 hours and then you have to leave or something. This is your 4 hours of free parking. If you stay for 5 hours, you only pay for 1 hour of parking. So it's not that you're gonna be given a ticket or kicked out or your car's gonna be towed. The technology we're hoping to have for this will be very seamless. You know, you don't even have to go up to a meter or anything. If your license plate is in the system, the scanner will see that you're pulling in, and when you pull out, it'll just charge you for what time you were there for. You don't have to, run around looking for a meter or anything like that. Technology has really come a long way since the meters of the 1900s, where you had to run back and feed the meter every couple hours. Non-city residents would get a $30 pass, providing them 2 hours of parking per visit at all city lots. And then these commercial A businesses, one of the proposals that this business owner had was just combine the business and the downtown resident parking pass into a single pass. So there's a $480 annual pass for businesses and a $350 pass for residents. Those are people who live in the commercial A district, who depend on street parking. Let's say they don't have a driveway, they don't have a parking space off street. This is a pass that's already in our fee schedule. We make this available to people who live downtown right now. Mr. Peterson's suggestion was just combine those because it's kind of the same thing you're offering. So, and I think in the next draft of this, I might get rid of the resident pass for commercial aid district and just combine that with the commercial aid district business or resident pass. And then boat launches. This is something that's absolutely necessary if we're going to do paid parking. We have to have paid boat launching at City Beach and Memorial Field as well. Boat trailers take up twice the parking spaces of the vehicle. They're not paying anything right now. We had 26,000 boats enter Bonner County from out of Bonner County in 2024. 26,000. That's literally probably thousands of those launched at our 2 city boat launches, leaving tens of thousands of dollars on the table. It's $20 per launch to launch at Dover Bay right now, and we're not charging anything. So there's a ton of money being left on the table. Actually, our state waterways advisory committee reached out to me as the parks director and said, would the city of Sandpoint take the lead on implementing paid boat launch fees in Bonner County? Because all of Kootenai County, including the city of Coeur d'Alene, has gone to paid boat launch fees. So these fees are just based pretty much on what Kootenai County and the city of Coeur d'Alene are charging. That's identical price for Idaho state residents per launch and for the season pass as well. So of course, if you don't have a slip on the lake and you live in Bonner County, you live in Idaho, you have a Idaho registered vessel, you can buy a $50 pass, which, you know, you're launching 10 times a year at least. That's $5 per launch. So, but for those tourists, for those 26,000 people who drive into Bonner County every year, $10 is nothing, right? They're going to spend more on that on gas from the Montana state line to the boat launch to get their trailer here. So $10 to launch. They will not bat an eye. And this will generate probably close to $100,000 a year for the city to maintain our boat launch facilities and the parking lot that serves them. The hourly rates are on this slide. Basically a peak summer rate for non-pass holders of $3 at the city, at the waterfront lots, and then just $2 an hour, which is what we charged back in the 2010 city lot. Okay. I'm just going to skip through these last few slides. You guys ask questions. Again, what's the alternative here? The alternative is we can go another 40 years without any money to resurface our parking lots. They're going to continue to deteriorate, and we're going to have to spend even more property taxpayer money to repair them eventually, taking money away from other infrastructure projects. We have so many infrastructure needs in the city. The last thing we should be spending property tax dollars on is parking lots that are used by non-city residents for free, right? It's not free. It's city taxpayers providing free parking to everybody else who uses them. Okay, let's get, I just love these historic pictures of parking meters on First Avenue. This was from a postcard in 1990. We had parking meters in 1990. This one is from the 1950s or 60s, parking meters in the 50s and 60s. There's a picture of a guy feeding a meter right there. Okay. This is not, we're not inventing something new here. We're just bringing it back. This is phase 0 or step 1, I guess we could say, of the implementation. When we get through the public feedback, which we're doing now, this could go to council later this year. We then have to go out to bid and find a firm that can implement our parking plan. Looking for something that requires very little enforcement. Last thing we want to do is have more police patrolling downtown. So either a gate system or a license plate reader system is what we're looking for at our bigger city lots. And then monitor, see how it's going. Are we achieving closer to that 85% occupancy rate? Is it now possible for a Sandpoint resident to go find a parking spot near their boat slip or at City Beach? Because right now it's not. It's not possible. It's literally impossible. The marina slip holders tell me all the time, I have to get there by 8 in the morning if I want to park anywhere near my boat. Okay, well, that's silly. Who's parking there? A bunch of people with Montana, Washington, and Alberta license plates. Let's make them pay. All right. Maybe they'll think twice before parking all day there. Okay, so we're trying to solve a problem. And that's the presentation.
So,
And again, if you guys aren't gonna have time during this meeting, but please take notes on this, give it to Heather at the front desk, and she'll pass them on to me. So questions, comments, discussions. I have my list of notes that I keep adding to. It's gotten to be, they're all notes I've taken at other meetings, so I want to add to this now with your guys' feedback.
so Molly, do you want to go ahead? I know you have more questions, and then after you posed your questions, we can ask people around the table here too.
Are you going to include bike parking on all off-street lots? Free?
Bike parking will remain free.
Will it be included? I didn't see it on the plan for the city lot. There's some out at the corners, but more would be good.
Great question.
We'd like people to not just drive their car. I mean, at some point, you can't accommodate all the cars in the world.
So is that not in the plans or is it not considered a car parking
The
issue?
The parking management plan doesn't contemplate improving bike parking, but that's because that's not related to the parking management plan. But we've got a $600,000 grant we've applied for with a $100,000 match to redo the City Beach parking lot this year. Hopefully, it's the last time we have to ask the state to pay for that work, because if we have a funding mechanism, we'll be able to pay for it ourselves next time. But as we go, if we get that grant and we go into engineering, I guarantee you, Maeve, who's going to be overseeing that project, will take into account bicycle parking at City Beach. The city lot, throw Brandon on the bus here, that's his project. I can see him taking notes over here. But yes, Molly, improving access to bicycle parking should be something we strive for in all of these designs.
Thanks. Okay, good. And if we are charging for boat launches, which I really support, some of the money should go to boat washes to keep our lake clean.
Washes.
Yeah, we did that when we redid the Memorial Fields boat launch. We put that boat wash station there.
Yeah.
Free boat wash station, and I've heard a lot of people suggest we do something like that at City Beach as well. So
Yeah,
that's something for, if we get this $600,000 grant, we want to make sure we include that in the redo of the City Beach parking lot, because that would have to be somewhere in the vicinity of the City Beach boat launch.
sure. But I'm suggesting that when you look at what the money that's generated will be used for, that the boat washes are going to need some maintenance, blah, 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 blah. Let's subsidize them from the parking of the boat launches.
Yeah, great suggestion.
Okay. You've put a lot of work into this. Thank you.
Other questions, Molly?
Now, everybody else's turn.
How about the rest of y'all? Have you got questions for Jason?
Got a question for you, Jason. You considered the time frame for throughout a day, 24-hour period? And this would be in effect, or is it just continuously?
So I see you mean like downtown street parking has time limits only until like 5 PM or something. It's not, yeah.
Right, yeah, overnight, is that, what are the
Yeah,
thoughts on?
I haven't yet. That's an interesting, like, that's a good consideration. Like maybe the city lot is free after 6 PM or something. Yeah, people are going to a show, they don't have to pay if they're at the Canada for 3 hours or festival or something.
Right,
That makes good sense. We know the city lot in particular is at its maximum occupancy during the workday. Right now, it's like 90% every day of the week. If there's probably 3 or 4 parking spaces open in the city lot right now because it's full of downtown business employees.
9 to 5.
Yeah, so 95. Once business employees go home for the day, like we don't have that constrained parking problem anymore. So maybe it's not necessary to charge for parking. And that goes back to that 85% level. If we see in the evenings that parking lot's less than 50% occupied, there's no need to charge for parking because we want to encourage people to park there. It's being underutilized.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
could see that being a good amenity to keep it
Yeah.
after hours, still is free, or for somebody who leaves their car overnight even, because wherever they're at it.
Yep.
Bars, had a few drinks, their friend took them home, don't have to worry about getting towed midnight or something.
Yeah.
Right, sure.
Other questions?
I got you. So you done reading?
Yeah.
Okay. How is parking pass required? I feel like more pain points for citizens.
Don't know, but I can give you an example of how another city is doing this. Over the weekend my wife was down in Hood River for a ski race with my daughter. She was going to the Ferment Brewery down there, which is on the waterfront area. And she took a picture of the parking sign at their Riverside parking lot there, which is so it's called the event site. And this is so cool. I like went ahead and followed the instructions on this to see how it works. And I'm like, this would work really well for City Beach. It's
Yeah.
very similar. It's their waterfront parking. It's where all the windsurfers
Oh, yeah.
go
Spend
to
time
launch
there.
launch their windsurf boards. They've got a few hundred parking stalls, just like we do at City Beach. So the event site is owned and operated by the Port of Hood River. Use fees contribute to upgrades, repairs, and maintenance. Thank you for your support. But to pay to park, you just enter the word event site and then text this number here, and I did that. And then it takes you to their parking management webpage where you can buy your annual pass. And it's license plate connected, so I could literally go and enter my license plate number, pay guess how much their annual pass is? $225. Okay, we're talking $15 for an annual pass for our parking lot. $225 for an annual pass. And I enter my license plate number, and then I go park, and now it's in the system. Okay, if I want to pay for a daily rate, it's $2.50 per hour or $15 for the full day. So I just have to enter that and send a text message, and it immediately takes me to their parking management page. So something like that would work for us.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so in other words, I think the solution isn't gonna be like, come into City Hall. I don't want to create more administrative work for the frontline staff here. City residents, we could promote it in the newspaper, we could promote it with your water bill. Here's a QR code, scan it, go buy your annual parking pass, so that when you go to City Beach this summer, you already get your 4 free hours. You don't have to worry about getting a ticket or paying for your first hour. So just make it as seamless as possible.
That's what I wanted to
And it
hear.
has to be license plate connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is how you're gonna prove, your resident versus non-resident. That's.
Well, that's
I mean,
super easy.
70
You have to enter your
meters.
address. You have to do that right now for all of our rec
I mean, like,
programs, for
somebody could
example.
Some
Um,
botch and address, but you can use mine.
Well,
You
your
know-
license plate will be connected to an address as
Okay.
well, so sure, there's a
So you'll be able to pull
verification.
that, like, link those two.
Yeah,
hopefully.
we have residency requirements for all sorts of programs right now. Cami, our rec admin, actually, it's all done automatically through the software. I moved from South Sandpoint to West Pine recently,
Mhm.
and I went to renew my sports center membership for the sports center. And it recognized my new address as being outside of city limits, so my membership rate went up to the non-resident rate.
Well, that sucks for you, but cool. for-
No, it's
This isn't
No big deal.
easy.
You still get a great deal.
Yeah. I was gonna just reiterate the drinking and driving thing. Boise did put meters in a few years ago, and DUIs went through the roof because they were metering through the night. That's a bummer.
So that goes back to Reed's suggestion,
Yeah.
maybe
I'm
not,
sorry,
you know,
wait, I'm not making that connection. Can you clarify? that
Just
for
not
me?
metering overnight, because then people were, leaving the bars, they didn't want to pay $2 an hour overnight, so they're drinking and driving.
I see. Okay,
Uh,
thanks.
There's costs associated with that too, so. You mentioned dynamic pricing. Is there a plan for winter months and slack season, just because demand's way down?
yeah. I can tell you that the mayor was really excited about this, like, real-time surge pricing
Yeah.
model, like on
Ah.
Uber, you know? And
Pretty hard to
I have looked into this, and it's very expensive to implement. You literally have to put sensors on every single parking space in the parking lot in the city,
Mhm.
so that the system knows which spaces are occupied and which aren't.
Yeah.
So these little like hockey puck sensors that you put either down in the asphalt or like on top, so that when a car pulls over, it knows that there's a car there.
Mhm.
And then it tells the computer system, and as the number of parking spaces available decreases, the price starts to go up.
Yeah,
That's true dynamic pricing,
yeah,
right? It literally changes throughout the day. Great in theory. It probably works well for big, well-equipped and financed cities,
Mhm.
but it's way more expensive to implement than something
for
that's,
sure.
that, our dynamic pricing would be peak season and off-peak season.
Okay, so you are planning on,
Yeah, so if we're looking like May 1st to September 30th would be peak season, and those waterfront lots, which we know are at 100% right now, would be $3 an hour versus $2 an hour the rest of the year.
perfect.
Yeah.
So the two Sandpoint marinas are essentially substitutes for launching boats.
Yep.
Are there plans on all of a sudden entering the lottery to get one of those becomes much more enticing? Is there plans to raise those prices?
So everybody who doesn't have a boat slip is like, you should raise the price of boat slips, and everybody has a boat slip says, "Oh, I just raised it last year, they raised it 2 years ago." And So there is the marina slip parking path, flip over
Mhm.
parking paths. And that's such a controversial topic,
Yeah,
you know. I pointed out that private marinas in the area are times the price for a slip as the public marina. But then people counter, well, you get all these other amenities at the private marinas as well. They often have awnings over your slips. They have restroom facilities. They have sometimes even have like, you know, a fuel, you can fuel up in the marina. We don't have any of that at the city beach. So you are getting more at a private marina than you are at the city beach marina. But right now, the city slips for city residents is $745 a year at the Sandpoint marinas, our public marinas. A similar size slip around the corner in Sand Creek is $2,800.
yeah,
So it's heavily subsidized if you just look at the dollar per foot of slip space. So plenty of people have said we should be charging more for those. There's a philosophy there, right? Like, do we need to be charging even close to market rates for the slips? The $150 parking pass for marina slip holders, that is essentially a way of charging a little bit more for the marina slip. And it creates an incentive. If you're a Sandpoint resident who has a sailboat at Windbag, do you really need a parking spot? Could you drop your stuff off at the beginning of the season, your stuff's in your boat, now you ride your bike to and from the boat, right? But there has been talk about raising our moorage fees. They were raised about 3 years ago by about $100. So that's not nothing. And they will be raised by inflation this year. We're raising all our fees by 2.9%, I think, as we do every year, just an inflation adjustment.
Mhm.
But that's kind of a totally different question, the parking management plan. Like, are we charging the right rates for our?
For sure. I was just thinking because they are substitutes, like they're related.
You mean like boat launch use
Boat launches
versus?
versus using those slips.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, if we charge for a boat launch, you get a $50 annual boat launch pass versus a $750 boat slip. It will, I can say this right.
There's an annual pass?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's always a waiting list for boat slips at our
Yeah.
city marinas.
Well, I know, I can't get in.
Yeah, it's a lottery system every year. So those people have literally won the lottery to have a boat slip there.
Yeah, I'm aware. Even has any levers on there, I take a spot. So there was a 50, I missed that $50. So there's no Sandpoint resident pass for for launching
There's the
pricing.
well, that goes down to funding for boat launch facilities often comes from the state level.
Okay,
So
so city's not paying
the
that
two
now.
groups there would be state residents and non-state residents.
Okay,
Like even the dollars, the grant money I'm trying to get to resurface the parking lot and then next year use the same grant to redo the boat launches at City Beach. Those are state grants. So they're using voter registration dollars to pay for that. So Idaho boat registrations would be considered the in-group in that case.
cool. And then the last, I just want to reiterate the more bike parking options. I typically like City Beach and even finding a spot to time a bike up is.
I had a question and I want to get your thoughts on the committee's thoughts on bike parking at City Beach. I know when I ride to City Beach, which is all the time this summer, because who could park at City Beach? I'm not usually parking like at the front of the beach. I like to ride to where I'm going and then leave my bike close to where I am. So
Yeah.
does it make sense to centralize bike parking at City Beach or have it dispersed around the path near to where people are actually going? Because right now we have like a bike rack on either end of the path, but there's no place to put bikes around the path.
And what's the policy on biking?
They're allowed on the path.
Okay.
But do we want to encourage that by putting more bike parking? Like, what if they had like 4 bike parking spaces, areas around the entire perimeter path?
We could put some by the restrooms, so people can take the road, they're not incentivized to go down the bike path. Even though it's allowed, but they're not encouraged to do that and park over there between restaurant, bike parking and the restroom, and you're pretty well close to everything.
I agree that adding some at the restroom would be helpful, and this is a different issue, but they need to be racks to which you can lock your bike. So not just a nut for your front tires.
The city has had a policy of staples, the big rounded things that you can lock your bike to, not racks.
Yeah,
And you'll see those staples throughout downtown. That was an outcome of the previous Ped Bike Committee. And I think that's what we should be providing, because yes, Kate, if you can't really lock your bike,
Yeah, you
And
could
yeah.
almost put racks all the way around outhouse or the toilet on the, south side. Maybe have a little trail going around, because that's all by the basketball courts and,
Yeah,
That's all
it's kind of
kinda-
centralized. That
yeah,
makes a
it
lot of
is, and you
sense.
can see it from all over the beach.
Seems like having a.
So there's some hesitancy about putting them like all the way around the river trail, because that encourages people to ride their bikes.
I think that's a good
Pedestrian.
point.
I agree.
Yeah.
Maybe having like, maybe a combination though, where there's large, two larger sections where you can park with the staples and there's like space for 20 or 30 bikes there. And then, yeah, I mean, a few along the path, because I mean, the path, it's like bigger just question, but like the path is super narrow to begin with. And I think
Yeah.
it should be accessible for bicyclists too. So it's not ideal to have it only be 5 feet right now. So maybe someday it's wider and there's bikes and there's pedestrians, bikes going slowly. Then we have facilities for parking your bike. Yeah, bigger picture.
Okay,
Anything further, Adam?
Well, I know overall I like it. There's definitely willingness to pay. You'd probably be the most hated person in the area for a bit, but
what else?
I think rational
Why I
people,
moved
like,
out of
I think Sandpoint citizens are a fan, county folk are happy.
Other questions?
Are you gonna have a community engagement other than just these meetings, a survey or? a
Survey, working on the survey. Yeah, get that out.
I have a couple questions.
Go for it.
I'm wondering if there's any way to have something like a carpool reference at the parking lot. I'm thinking of arriving at the beach with two toddlers. And if I have to, maybe I have everything attached to a wagon and I can walk the 5 blocks from somewhere else, but everywhere I go, I have to go with those two toddlers. So if I forget the sunscreen, I have to walk back 5 blocks with them and then walk the, I just wish there were some way to make it possible for people for whom it's hard to walk that distance to, I'm sure we have, places for people with disabilities, and I often used to think that having two toddlers was a kind of a disability, but is there some way that we could just make that available? 10 spaces, I don't know, lots of people come there with little kids. It would be nice.
One suggestion that's been shared several times is having like 15 minutes of, free time in the parking lots. People can drop kids off or drop equipment off or drop
Mhm.
toys off. And then if they, this would be for out of town guests, not pass holders, because pass holders have 4 hours of free parking anyway. But if you're a tourist in town and you drive to Sandpoint, you're like, oh, it's $3 an hour, I can't afford that. Go in, drop all your stuff off, drive out to Fifth or Sixth,
Mhm.
park in the all day free parking out there, and then just one person has to walk back.
Right,
So that would be easy to do with the license plate.
That
reader.
makes
It
a lot of
knows when you
sense,
come in
yeah.
and when you leave.
okay. And then will there be any options for people without a smartphone to get a permit? There's kind of a drift back towards flip phones these days. Will there be any way to pay?
Yeah.
With money?
You could just go, well, if you have you might need a computer. You can go to the website, sign up. Or come into City Hall and someone can help you.
So if I get to,
As I said.
Okay,
We
so-
don't want 5,000 people coming to City Hall with
Okay.
parking passes, but for people who need help, there's always a way. Yeah, the front desk here can always help people with all their.
yeah, but when I've just found my parking spot, it's.
Heather will take care of it.
Uh,
Right?
yeah, it just seems like that would be something, or maybe it will just make people so angry they won't come back, and maybe that's what we want to achieve anyway. But I think that could be an issue. And then I still have questions about the hotel. I'll try to be brief. You say that people who are staying at the hotel will not be allowed to park at City Beach.
I'm saying if that's something that if we wanted to, if the city council decided to make that a policy, they could put signs.
And
up
we
saying
could
it's-
enforce that with the license plate identification technology.
Well,
right?
here's one thing that's, if you think about this, if you drive to Sandpoint to stay at that hotel and you get there and you've got a reservation and you see that there's this big parking lot that charges $3 an hour, or you get free parking at the hotel because you're a guest there, which are you gonna choose?
Well, I'm gonna park at the hotel if
Unless
there's a
it's full.
space.
Yeah.
And when it's full, what are you gonna do? What do people currently do when they get to where they're going and the parking lot's full?
They drive around until they find a space on the street.
Okay. So first of all, just to get a couple things out there, the parking that's being provided by the hotel is expected to serve the hotel during its high demand periods. So there will be special event periods, like during a wedding or during a conference, right? So what the hotel has been told by city staff already is that during special event periods, let's say there's a wedding with 200 guests during the summer, they can't use City Beach parking lots for
They
that
have to
spillover
provide
parking.
a show.
Just like the festival at Sandpoint provides off-site parking during special events, the hotel would have to do the same. So they already plan to have shuttles that they run to and from the Spokane airport and up and down from Schweitzer and things like that. So they would have to use their shuttles to shuttle people to and from off-site parking, for example, at the high school. So the summer months are really what we're talking about. Shoulder seasons, I am excited for the hotel and conference guests at the hotel to use City Beach parking lot because there's nobody using it during October and April, and those are conference seasons. So when conferences take place in the shoulder seasons, which is when conferences take place, City Beach parking lot's empty. And if their parking lot's full, I want 100 people parking at City Beach because that's $300 an hour that goes into the
Right.
city's park
So,
improvement fund.
but let me just ask about the number of spaces they were required to have before they paid the.
That wasn't a requirement. We have three things in our code. There's a table that assigns a number based on the land use,
Mhm.
okay? And this has some really crazy things like number of bowling lanes in a bowling
I
alley.
remember, I
Determines how many
worked
parking
on that
spaces. required.
table.
Square feet of dance floor space in a
Right,
dance
right, yeah,
studio
I remember.
requires how many parking spaces
Uh-huh.
are required. Those numbers are based on, Brandon, you can probably tell us, some like 18th century engineering manual that was
No,
developed
it skipped, I
in,
mean, I.
you know,
really-
Pittsburgh or something.
Uh-huh.
So that there's two other things though. We have the parking demand analysis, which is any developer in town, anybody who needs to build something. And they're not in the parking exempt zone, which is 80% of downtown is in the parking exempt zone where there's no off-street parking required. They can commission a study that says, what is our real level of demand? Not what does this arbitrary table from the 1900s say we need, but what do we really need? And then the third option is to just say, okay, well, the city tells us we need this many spots. We can buy down half of those using these in lieu parking fees.
And I
$10,000
guess that's
per
my
space.
problem. If they bought down to 145 spaces with their in lieu fee, we must have asked them originally for 290. Their study,
No, they didn't go all the way. They could go down to 120, actually.
okay, so
The code allows them to go down to 120 stalls.
based on the use of the in lieu fee, which,
Or the parking demand analysis. Those are the
Okay.
two tools that.
and it's their parking demand analysis. I guess that's what's bothering me. They say they don't need as many spaces.
Well, they didn't write it. They got Kimley Moore in engineering.
Okay, so this is a disinterested third party that we can count on their opinion.
Can I, I just want to add, if you truly believe that the parking study they submitted by their engineer undercounts the amount of parking that they need, and that it's going to spill over into the city beach if it's inadequate, do you want to allow city beach parking to remain free, or do you want to charge people? That's the question that I think people need to be.
I think
When they're
that's a
having
good
this discussion.
question, and I'm all for charging for City Beach anyway, even if the new hotel weren't going in. I just, the in lieu thing, makes me nervous, because essentially it says, you don't have to provide what we said you had to provide. You can pay us money and then have to absorb the cost. That's how it looks to me. So when the study comes from them and they're funding it, that's just, I would rather.
They
that-
didn't have to do any study. They could have just paid down. using the
So they
fees
don't
by
have
right.
to, so we just, yeah, but we just have to take their numbers at face value and.
Well, I mean, you could also say that they had to take our numbers at face value.
Yeah, but we're here and we live here and we're residents, and they're investors making a lot of money off of our town. And those are not my favorite people over the past 20 years. So I just want to, I want to make sure that their numbers are valid from our perspective as well as theirs. And if you say they are, that's enough for me, but it's that the way that's presented just leads me to question it.
There's a whole, field of study around parking and free parking and parking requirements and all of these things. And I don't know, I don't think most people realize this, but if that hotel were 100 yards to the west, their parking requirement would be 0. They wouldn't be required to provide any parking by the city, just like, the building that Fat Pig and the Pond Rate Winery is in, they don't provide any parking. But the amount of parking that they demand, when that restaurant's full, there's 120 guests there. When the winery's full, there's another 120 guests. There's 240 people in that building drinking and eating on a Friday night. And they have 0 parking spaces for those people. So why would that developer not have been required to provide, let's say, 120 parking spaces?
Well,
But
because,
no, when we think about it like philosophically, it's very clear, right? What's the implication of requiring more off-street parking? It's that the Myers who did that building remodel would have had to buy the whole block and flatten it and put up a parking garage.
yeah,
That made the project infeasible.
but
And we would have
that's
lost 3 historic buildings.
exactly. And those people can park in the lot and park on the street and walk a few blocks to eat. People going to a big new hotel, much bigger apparently than the one that was there before. They can't go to a hotel and walk a couple blocks from their car. They're gonna need to park where they can haul their suitcases inside.
And the hotel knows that.
So the compare, and it's not a historic building. It's,
Getting torn down.
well, yeah, and then there was other stuff torn down before that. So it's comparing apples to oranges, Jason. I don't think that's a fair comparison. I don't want to see folks parking at City Beach, taking up spaces, folks from the hotel taking
What
up.
about in
spaces at
October
City
or April?
Beach. In October or April, I don't mind.
Should they be paying when they are using it in October or April?
Absolutely. But even in the summer, those folks who can afford to stay at that fancy hotel are much more likely to be able to afford the parking fees and not mind them. So I just want to make sure that the hotel is providing their parking and we're not.
Are you gonna keep the beach closed down at night?
Well, currently overnight parking is not allowed at the beach.
Right.
Now, that's not enforced currently because there's not really a pressure for that. But that's something that, we could just have the police enforce. So hotel guests will get towed if they try to park overnight. That's what I mean. Like the solution to this is all, it's a
all
policy
out.
solution, right?
That's good.
We
To
don't shut the gate anymore.
No, we don't.
I think
Unless
we've
we're from high school.
beaten this horse about as dead as it can get. And if other people have more questions about it, let's entertain them. And if not,
I have one more question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that parking lot in Hood River had a daily rate. Are you guys thinking of capping it like you said
Yeah,
for conferences?
It's actually in the fee schedule. So
It's
or,
the,
or it's in the narrative, I think.
oh, so there will be a cap.
So, yeah, the proposal is $16 a day at the downtown lots and $24 a day at the waterfront lots. And that came out of, the first planning and zoning meeting. I think it was Scott Torby. He was like, I just don't think $16 a day is enough to disincentivize someone driving from Spokane from parking at the City Beach lot. Like if you really were trying to free up more spaces for residents, you need to make that daily maximum higher. So and the Dock Street, the lot that serves the marina, is another one. The last thing we want is people parking there all day. When really should be for marina slip holders. So creating a stronger incentive at those city lots to, don't park there all day. Or if you do, you gotta be willing to pay for it as a non-city resident. So $24 maximum.
But could you change it in the off season? Say you
Sure.
want these conferences, if somebody's parking a long time for a conference. Is that,
We want less money or more money.
well, it's not full, or
Yeah.
not, nobody's using
So
it
you
at
lower it
that
to
point.
like $16.
Well, that's why I'm wondering if you could have
Oh,
different,
totally. Yeah. All of this could be, and we want to be like flexible and responsive. Maybe not the mayor's vision of prices changing 10 times throughout the day. But we could easily change prices, seasonally. I
Good bike racks on Dock Street.
think so.
yeah,
Are there?
there's a
Yeah,
little bit.
one of my slides showed all the Dock Street parking.
Jason, will these fees be reviewed annually?
Oh, of course, all our fees are.
then
Yeah.
these are just starters, and you'll be
Yep.
evaluating which are too low, which are too high. So
Yep.
we don't have to spend forever on them.
Right.
Good.
Well, and also we need to move on if we're gonna finish our
I was
agenda.
just gonna say one thing about signage, that if the bottom line is we want people to start walking into downtown, not driving into downtown, then we need better walking signage, like, you know, where is downtown? Which way is downtown? You know, it's gridded so simply.
Yeah.
But if we just had on the 3 sides of downtown where people are starting to park, how to get there.
Sure.
So signage, I think, is very important.
Yeah, and some cities have experimented with saying 5-minute walk. You know,
Exactly.
for
Yeah.
something
Yes.
close.
Yeah, yeah.
Very, very cool. I like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
great, good idea.
And
Right
if
on.
you guys want to read this in more detail, take it home with you, add notes. You can email me your notes if you prefer, but just drop it off with Heather and she'll get it to me if you want to take notes. Give me the hard copy back.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
No public comments. So Brandon, let's go on and hear about the downtown parking lot, and then hopefully we'll have time to talk about selecting an in-person chair for future meetings as well.
Thanks, everyone. I'm gonna run.
Nice to see you,
Appreciate it.
Jason.
You too.
Okay, so we are in the middle of a project to repave the downtown parking lot. And this is the aerial view of it. This is, let's see. Sorry, I'm gonna reshare a different. Okay, so this is a work in progress. It is still preliminary. This is the concept that will be presented to city council next week. And it will be attached to the agenda, which should be posted very shortly today or tomorrow, I believe. So you're kind of getting a little bit of a sneak preview of it. North is to the right of this sheet, so Joel's is on the left side of the page across Church Street.
So it's changed since what we got, it's changed from what we got in the packet, looks like, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, you know, we've been working on the design up until, you know, attachment to the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a constant work in progress and nothing is definite yet. And we're presenting a concept to council so that they can direct staff to continue with the final design and also direct us to add or remove any elements that they do or do not like. The purpose of doing this is number one, because the asphalt is degrading, which we all probably know about. There are some stormwater issues there. It's probably not graded the best way. There's some ponding out there every time it rains. So we want to regrade it and repave it. It's probably past due, a resurfacing. The other reason is because the current layout, in my opinion, does not meet the dimensional standards in our city code for off-street parking, which we require of private development. And primarily what I mean is that the access aisles for the angle of parking that we have right now are not wide enough, which a lot of people who use that parking lot, locals, may know just anecdotally that it feels very tight to drive through those access aisles. And the reason is because we squeezed more lanes of parking in there than what a typical engineering standards would require. So that's the other thing. And then the big change with this one is right now there's a two-way entrance and exit off of Church and one off of Oak. And what we're proposing here is to move that to a single in and out off of 3rd Street. Third Avenue, which is at the top of the page there. So how this affects the bike and pedestrian committee, the first thing is that I believe that reducing the number of times that cars can cross the public sidewalk is a good thing for pedestrian and bicycle safety. It's just one, we're going from two locations where cars are driving across sidewalks to one. I don't have any data, pedestrian traffic data to back this up, but again, anecdotally, I believe that the sidewalk along Third Avenue is probably less traveled than less used, at least in the summertime, than the other two that are on Oak and Church. And also, from a intersection safety standpoint, the intersection next to Joel's on Church and the intersection next on Oak, near Jeff Jones Square are highly traveled pedestrian routes. And when we have the entrances and exits turning in and out of a through street, which is what Oak and Church are, it creates more of a conflict with those pedestrian movements than what we would do on Third Street, which is that you're coming in and out of a driveway where it's stop controlled at the end of the block, no matter which way you turn, which makes it less likely that the cars are going to be screaming in and out of the parking lot and having those conflicts with pedestrians. So I do like the idea that on Oak Street, we've kind of decided that that's a pretty important bicycle route. We have striped the bike lanes green there, and kind of encourage people to use that as a bike route. So it's good that we're taking this entrance off of Oak Street because there's one less conflict with that bike lane on the south side of Oak Street. Also, in my opinion, the existing striping was laid out when we had different standards for Americans with Disabilities Act accessibility guidelines for how wide and where the ADA spaces, the accessible spaces are supposed to be located. So one of the benefits of changing this layout, it allows us to bring that up to the current standards, which are called PROWAG. It's the Public Right-of-Way Accessibility Guidelines, and they're very new guidelines that for the first time talk about what you do for public facilities. This isn't in the public right-of-way, but it's still, we're trying to bring it up to the new accessibility standards. The other thing I'll say is that providing the minimum city standard dimensional standards of the parking lot for these access aisles does make it a little easier to walk from your car out to the public sidewalk. I know that those people aren't really pedestrians when they're driving and parking at the parking lot, but it's just I do believe it's going to help a little bit with pedestrian safety for cars, people getting to and from cars in the parking lot, trying to get out to the sidewalk to walk around downtown. And then lastly, there was a question about bike racks. I do intend to work some sort of bike racks as part of this project. I'm not showing them on here right now because it's a concept, but as we move forward toward final design, I do intend to include bike racks in at least a couple different locations. Whether or not those get value engineered out remains to be seen, but I'm going to push for it certainly. And Molly, I do agree that those style that you're talking about are much better. And Kate,
You can lock to.
Great.
the single ones, the single tower ones that you can lock on either side are much better than the old style ones, which we've had down at City Beach since I was a kid. So yeah, in my opinion, I'm never going to propose that style of bike rack anywhere on any new project.
So are you just looking for input from us or trying to inform us, anything in particular?
Trying to inform you, give you a little time to think about it before council. I don't know. I was just kind of asked to bring city projects as quick as I could to the committee so that you could provide input. Yeah, mostly just informational, but I'm more than happy to take comments.
Anyone? have
You think
anything?
ground level, just like it is now?
Yes,
Shoot right out to the sidewalks.
correct.
You know, that is an issue that on Oak Street now, the sidewalk kind of merges with the parking lot, so are we gonna have some kind of barrier there?
Great point. That was the big thing that I'm gonna push for right now. That's the last thing I want to get cut out of this design. What I have here is a curb along that interface
Mhm,
so that there's a wheel stop 2
Mhm.
feet from the sidewalk.
yeah.
So that it's literally not possible for trucks to overhang that sidewalk.
Well, and for cars and
Just stop
people to
them.
kind of be walking in the
Yeah.
same areas.
Yep.
How I've experienced.
Now,
Good.
that curb, how are, wheelchairs and what have you, strollers gonna access the sidewalk?
So you can cut it out where you need to have the access aisles
Okay,
so
so
that they
that can be-
can, they can go directly from the access aisles through that curb
Yeah.
onto the sidewalk.
Okay.
I'm curious, you show some striped areas. Are those asphalt but striped, or are they greenery?
The white lines
Yeah,
here are the
yeah.
stripes. Those are all stripes. The green highlights are where I'm proposing new tree wells.
Okay.
And these other
I
striped
think she's talking
areas,
about that, like these.
yeah, why can't we
Oh,
park cars there?
Those angled striping are like, yeah, we stripe that as no parking, either because of turning movements
Mhm.
or for protection from the car at the end of the aisle, or in the case of the ones up on the top of the page, they're striped as access aisles for ADA. Some of
Yeah.
those, if they're not used for ADA access aisles, there's the opportunity to turn those into landscape islands as well. But there's a trade-off because the least amount of curb islands we can add to this parking lot makes it a lot easier for our plow crews. Our city streets crew actually plows this parking lot. It makes it a lot easier for them to plow and they're not having to work around a bunch of little weird curb islands. So
Yeah. There's a lot to like about this. Well done. I have one concern. I think a lot of people will park in this lot to go towards First and Cedar, which is the bottom right-hand corner of what you're showing. And you don't have ADA parking there. So somebody ADA is going to have to travel further if they are going to the common downtown destinations. And I wonder if you should shuffle at least a couple of those parking spots down there.
yeah, the location of the ADA spots are definitely flexible. We can shuffle all those around. That's a good point. The reason I didn't show them on this concept in that location is because the new ADA standards require that when you have angled parking, the access aisle has to be on the right-hand side. It has to be on the passenger side of the vehicle for both
Yeah.
van and car accessible spaces. And so you can kind of imagine that would mean that in order to squeeze another parking space, we would have to put it right next to the sidewalk, which I was trying to create a space at all four corners for bike racks and public art potentially and greenery, that sort of thing. So anyway, good point, and we may consider that.
Is there a
Okay.
requirement for the percentage of ADA spaces versus total spaces? Or is it
Yes.
just your discretion?
Yeah, it's one per. Let's see, I think it's one per 25.
Got it.
So I have one extra shown on there than what is required. Just as a starting point, and I always like to add an extra one because it could also contribute to our overall downtown on-street ADA spaces, which it's questionable about whether we're up to standards right now on our street.
Curious about the location of the access, why it's located along the block. 2/3 to the,
That can shift. That's not locked in. The reason I put it there was because to try to avoid cutting trees down and move utility poles. Putting it there only really requires us to move like a in-ground junction box and a sign, I think. So it's just the most convenient place.
say it'd be one thing to align it with the alley. Just right in the middle of the block. But yeah, I hear you on the existing conditions, but you'd reduce like the queuing if cars are pulling in. Coming out of the north, turning left into that. Just thinking if it's closer to that intersection, you might be turning and then stopping. Cars could be one thing, just consider looking at the benefits, of the existing conditions.
Yeah, yeah, I know that a lot of people think that it's, you know, you always have to line it up with the alley or another street or driveway or something. This one does line up with the bank drive-through outlet on the other side of the street and not the alley. And lining it up with the alley, again, it requires cutting a tree down, so.
I like the tree.
Me too.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, this concept does propose planting 6 new trees and removing the existing ones in the parking lot. I suspect that I'm gonna get comments about that from council and the public, which is fine. But that's what this shows right now. And the reason for that is because the location of where those trees are right now means that we have to not design the layout of the parking lot the right way to make it easy to maneuver with vehicles and pedestrians. So leaving the trees in place is possible, but it's a non-ideal layout.
What's the plan with the current entrances that'll be closed? They're gonna stay there? You guys gonna get like a decent? You're gonna remove the ramps and add in some landscaping or?
I don't know if we've decided yet.
Yeah.
My thought was actually to either block them or chain them off so that if it ever needed to go back to driveways, it could. Another alternative would be to put bike racks there,
Yeah,
or public art or signage or something, so.
I don't know, not that we're aesthetics committee, but it's always kind of goofy looking when there's a ramp and it goes to nowhere. It just looks like it's a project that wasn't totally completed, in
Sure,
my opinion.
understood.
I don't know if we have time to discuss the process for selecting a presiding officer when I'm gone and Molly's gone, and because we had found that untenable in the past, having someone on the screen trying to conduct the meeting. Do you want to try to bring that up
Yeah.
quickly, or I can just say I will be here at the next meeting, so maybe we can put that agenda item at the next meeting.
Let me just do it in 60 seconds and then I'll add it as a follow-up on the next agenda. How about
Okay.
that? So for discussion, but let me just go through my spiel here. So what we're gonna do is either the chair or the chair needs to be here in person. The chair's not here in person, then the vice chair needs to be the interim head of the meeting. And if neither of them are there and there's a quorum, the clerk can call for the present members to select an interim in-person temporary chair for that meeting. So we can discuss that further at the next meeting.
All right. Gotta find the script for the meeting. Final item on the agenda is a committee roundtable and an opportunity for general announcements or comments from board members. We have 2 minutes for that. Does anyone have anything or she wishes to say briefly?
I got a list from City of Ponderay of all the grants available for bike and pedestrian sources. So I just wanted to give that to you. I know last time you said, where could we find grant money? And there's something there too for, I was thinking of you, Aaron, for your back to school to help finance some of these events that we're doing. I did that. And also, and the other thing is just about Nathan with the Idaho Department of Roads, when we were talking about the Dover Highway. I want to give you this too.
Okay. Well, I know the events committee was going to meet after this meeting to decide when they're next going to meet. Or maybe that was the intersection committee. But thank you for bringing those. Yeah, and Aaron, if you can hold on to them for the moment, then figure out what to do with them momentarily. With no further business on the agenda, this meeting is now adjourned at 12:59 p.m. Wow. minute or